Recording now.
Awesome. Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Ask the Doctor. It's nice to be back. And tonight we're going to learn about creating unstoppable energy. And believe me, I need some of that. I'm sure most of the people on this call do as well. We are lucky to be taught and trained by a leading expert in many areas of health, and we are so super blessed to have him with us. He has lectured, taught, trained doctors all over the world, well over 10,000 hours, and he's here to keep us well entertained, so don't forget to put your questions in the chat. The amazing Dr. Bob Rakowski.
Well, Carol, thank you always for the beautiful intro. Welcome back. I love you, my beautiful friend. I appreciate you. And, our whole family just is sending you hugs and love and healing energy. And God bless you and everybody in your beautiful family. So, unstoppable energy is something that probably most people are looking for. If you look at the top reasons that people go to any doctor anywhere in the world, it's either pain or it's fatigue. Those are the things that people have. And so we're going to talk about some of the basics of energy. And I'll tell a little story. I was at a conference, it was almost 20 years ago, and there was an 8-time world champion athlete that was a keynote speaker. And someone asked him, they said, "My gosh, how is it that you have so much energy?" And he just looked at him and he said, "You know what? The only way to have energy is to earn energy." And if we were going to give you a longer course on that, we'd tell you that you need to eat right, drink right, think right, move right, sleep right, poop right, talk right every single day. And maybe sometime we'll go into each of those in a little more detail, but we're going to focus on the big three, on eating, moving, and sleeping. And Tom Rath is really an expert in that. And I've shared his book before. And his story is beyond amazing. In this picture, he's 45 years old. And keep in mind, when he was either 15 or 16, he lost an eyeball to cancer. And when doctors did scans of his body, they looked at him and they said, "Wow, you have lost the genetic lottery. You have tumors all over your body. They're in your liver, they're in your pancreas, they're in your spleen, they're in your lungs, they're in your bones, and you know what, you'll probably never see your 37th birthday. Odds are very against it. And we don't expect you to have a very good life." Well, Tom Rath, very fortunately, comes from a family of brainiacs. His grandfather started the Gallup Poll Organization. And he was a good researcher, and he thought, there's got to be something that I can do. And the title of this book is really his autobiography, Eat, Move, Sleep. When he eats right, for him, his tumors shrink. When he moves right, for him, his tumors shrink. And when he sleeps right, for him, his tumors shrink. And if he falls down on any one of those, he actually regresses in his scans and gets worse. Now, in terms of basics of energies, since I've treated athletes and patients all over the world, some people want to know the nuts and bolts of energy. And there are 4 different energy systems in the body. There's stored ATP, and that's very fast energy. So if a lion were to, jump in the room and we had to get away from it quick, if we could, it'd be stored ATP. And then the second thing, which is actually called creatine phosphate. And between those two, maybe 3 seconds of ATP, 3 seconds of creatine phosphate. Then you actually go to something called anaerobic glycolysis. You burn sugar without oxygen. And this graph shows it going about 1 minute. Some elite athletes can actually get up to maybe 2 minutes of that. But then when we look at aerobic is how we make 94.4% of our energy. And even the leanest among us, have enough body fat on our bodies to run probably 3,000 miles. So that's a very, very efficient way to make energy. And when I would teach sports nutrition around the globe, I would tell people, you want to train all your muscle fiber types. You have fast fibers, you have slow fibers, you have in between, and you want to train all of your energy systems, fast energy, slow energy, in between. And you want to train the fiber types and the energy systems proportional to the demands of your sport or event. That's a picture of mitochondria. Those are little organelles within cells. They call them the little powerhouse. They make 94.4% of human energy. That's where fat burning occurs. And what we know is that mitochondria can make a big difference in the quality of your life. And so I created a law. I think it was the first law that I created, Rakowski's law, Rakowski's mighty law, take care of your mitochondria, and your mitochondria will take care of you. So what we know is that with training, we can improve the efficiency of our mitochondria, and we can even improve the number of our mitochondria. So we can double the mitochondria and we can triple their enzyme efficiency with proper physical exercise. We can improve our energy efficiency by 600%. Now, I want you to think about that. How would your life be with 600% more energy? And I think most of us would agree that it would be significantly better. And by the way, a fascinating finding is that actually, as we train our body, we even train our brain mitochondria. So we certainly want to move right. And every single day, they've got this wonderful way of counting steps, and people should take at least 10,000 steps a day. But you probably want to do things different than that based on the energy you want. And in fact, we want to train ourselves to live the life and do the things that we enjoy consistently. Now, when it comes to eating, we could go with a couple of simple rules. Jack LaLanne said, if God made it, it's okay. If man made it, stay away. Michael Pollan said, eat food, not too much, mostly plants. Well, looking at different studies on intermittent fasting and calorie restriction and this Nobel Prize winning process called autophagy, how the body clears out bad cells, the way that I describe here is a proven conglomeration of information to optimize your diet. So I'm going to tell you to eat real food, eat clean food, not too much, not too often, every color, every day, in a way that honors your physiology, your genetics, and your body goals, mostly plants. And I know there's a carnivore diet out there today, but here's what I can tell you, that we have incisors for for cutting, we have canines for tearing, we've got molars for grinding. Our mouth and our entire gastrointestinal system is a hybrid. We are not carnivores. We're not herbivores. We don't have 5 stomachs like a cow, but we're a hybrid. We are omnivores. We need both plants and animals. And these guidelines match what we should eat very, very nicely. When we start studying calorie restriction, we should spend less time of the day eating than we do eating. And I don't mean actual total time. We should all have at least a 14-hour window every single day where we don't eat anything. That gives our body a huge opportunity to clean out. And for most of us, it's probably going to be 16 hours. And for those that have different health vulnerabilities, we want to spend 18 hours a day in the fasted state. If you were wanting to be real technical about that, there's something called the ApoE genotype. And you can be an ApoE 22, 23, 24, ApoE 32, 33, 34, or ApoE 42, 43, 44. 22 is the longevity gene. If you have that, you're rare. You only need to fast 14 hours a day. If you're a 44, they actually call that the death gene. You need 18 hours of fasting. And if you're like me, I'm a 3-3, and that's where 60% of the population is. 16 hours of fasting is where we go. But when you look at intermittent fasting, there's a couple of things that I call biohacks. One is coffee. And in fact, I'm a huge fan of Ganoderma or reishi infused coffee, and fiber. There are some amazing fibers that are out there. You mix them in hot water, they have like a pudding-like consistency, and they have close to 0 calories. They might have 5 calories, 10 calories with a little sweetener. That's really not going to throw off your fast. And if you need a little something in your tummy, that's a great way to go. And then finally, when it comes to sleep right, a great day starts the night before. That's one of my favorite philosophies. And Anders Ericsson wrote the book Peak. He studied the best of the best from all areas of life, whether we're talking sports, business, academics, music. People that were really the best of the best slept on the average 8.6 hours a night. And we know that our brain uses a lot of energy, and I'm going to assume these people use a lot of energy with their brain. And guess what? They need to rest it. They need to get it to recover. And that was the amount of time that they would sleep. So some of the things we know is if you get screen time too close to bed, and by the way, normally I wear my amber blue blockers. I took them on vacation and I don't know where they went. So I've got to get another pair ordered. But I am someone that follows that, and I certainly won't have any screens within an hour of bed. And I like to block that blue light anyways. And then there's my favorite herb, Ganoderma. People that consume Ganoderma fall asleep faster, sleep deeper longer, and wake up more refreshed. And the reason I put in there via a GABAergic mechanism, GABA is the most calming neurotransmitter in the brain. And isn't it wonderful to have a calm brain that works better? So this week is going to be different. We had a few weeks off. I had a conference on a Tuesday, and then I actually had an in-person event. So one was virtual and one was in person. So I missed a few weeks. But people sent me questions this week, and I have to tell you that I really like questions. And so I said, okay, we're going to use this Ask the Doctor time to go through the questions. And this person asked, is it okay to go on depression medications? And, one, I'm never going to give advice on whether to start a medication or stop a medication. That's not my scope of practice. Remember, I'm a natural medicine, functional medicine doctor, chiropractor, kinesiologist, nutritionist, acupuncturist, not a medical doctor. And there's good reason for that. I don't want the liability of medicines, but I can give you some good information. And this person said, by the way, I've tried dynamic neural retraining. Good for you. Keep trying things. And they said that they had high cortisol. And so what do we know about this? Well, this is a 2018 PubMed study. And what they found was that antidepressants were only slightly better than a placebo at getting a brain effect, but they were far less tolerable. In other words, they had side effects that weren't very good. So how much do you get with an antidepressant? Not much good for your brain and a lot of bad for your body. And so there's probably good reason to not really do too much with that. You mentioned that you had high stress, and this was a study from many, many years ago, but there's universal agreement that 50 to 75% of people that have major depression, when they say they have hyperactivity of the HPA axis, what that means is the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, their brain is driving constant stress in their body. And that actually shuts off joy. It alters brain circulation in a way that doesn't make you happy, doesn't keep you focused. It's just not good for your brain or body. So I have talked about something called the stress reset, and I've now used this pretty successfully for a number of years. And I tell people it's probably the most effective clinical protocol that I have. I have people take 1 to 2 milligrams of melatonin every waking hour for 7 to 10 days. I do the same thing with theanine and also Ganoderma spores. So melatonin calms the body. It actually calms the adrenals. Theanine calms the brain, again, through GABA. And Ganoderma calms the body through the parasympathetic nervous system, the mind through GABA, and it's called the herb of spiritual potency. So very powerful 1, 2, 3 combination to put the brakes on stress. What else about depression? Well, we know that the brain is mostly water. It's the most hydrated tissue in the body, about 77% water. And we know it has the second highest number or amount of fat in the body. The highest fat in the body is actually adipose tissue. So the primary fat of the brain is called DHA, docosahexaenoic acid. That comes from cold water plants and cold water fish. And we just know that most people don't get enough of that. So I want people to be hydrated. I want them to buffer their stress. I want them to get super high quality omega-3s. And here's a sad reality from a very recent PubMed. Notice what it says. Over 95% of pregnant women didn't get enough omega-3s to give their baby a brain to give them the optimal start on life. So this is something that as a society, we all need to focus on because these kids are born with challenges. And then finally, Canadian Journal of Psychiatry, I've made great use of this data over the years with my patient base. These people were given a combination of something called S-adenosylmethionine, SAMe, that was 400 milligrams 4 times a day. And the 5-methyl form of folate in the long term is that 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate. If the bottle might even just say 5-methyl folate. and they did 500 milligrams 3 times a day and noticed that this was effective for even treatment-resistant depression. So buffer your stress, hydrate, get your omega-3s, and do your S-adenosylmethionine and SAMe. And those are proven ways to help the brain and help this depressive issue. And the next thing is that an inflamed brain is a depressed brain. So we want to do an anti-inflammatory diet and sometimes anti-inflammatory supplements. My favorite superfood, Ganoderma modulates the inflammatory process by over a dozen proven mechanisms and has proven antidepressant benefits. Someone else asked something about what were my top 3 recommendations for manic depressive, and this is going to kind of flow into that as well. One of my magnificent 7 is to think right. And this is Daniel Amen, and he has an interesting TED Talk entitled What I Learned After 83,000 Brain Scans. And when he's in his TED Talk, he said, you know, up until very recently, psychiatrists were the only medical professionals that did not examine the organ that they were looking at. They really didn't have a way to look at the brain. But now he has done that. And here's what he found out. You absolutely can change people's brains. So literally, when you change your mind, you change your mind. And in his book, The End of Mental Illness, he asked the question, what if mental health and brain health were one and the same? Well, they're very, very closely coupled. And so a better brain is going to lead to a better probability of better mental health. I taught a neurology series around the world with a neurologist from Cornell on brain health and brain chemistry. And we taught that the brain is the most nutrient dependent, energy dependent, stress vulnerable, and toxin vulnerable system of the body. And there's over 200,000 PubMed studies. We already talked about stress. We want to do that stress reset. We talked about energy. And remember, body energy and brain energy couple one another. Nutrition, the Global Nutrition Report says every country on planet Earth suffers from malnutrition. And toxins, quite simply, 80,000 plus registered toxic chemicals in our environment. Every person has about 700 in their system at all times. So we want to clean our environment, clean our brain, clean our body, nourish our body, enhance our energy, and buffer our stress. And these are great strategies to enhance our health. So when it comes to nutrition, I created this pyramid around the year 2002. I was giving a lecture in Orlando, Florida. The keynote speaker was Barry Sears, and he was presenting his book called The Zone. And he said, he put up a copy of the USDA food pyramid, and he said, if ever there was a terrorist-like plot designed to destroy the health of the world, this would be it. So I created my own pyramid. The base of the pyramid is nature's foods. If God made it, it's okay. If man made it, stay away. Remember, eat real food, clean food, not too much, not too often, every color, every day, in a way that honors your physiology, your genetics, and your health goals, mostly plants. Then we go to superfoods, top superfood on the planet, Ganoderma lucidum, functional foods. Now for the brain, there's functional foods that'll actually seal and heal the gut. Those are very important for the brain because most of our brain chemistry is in our gut. There's also anti-inflammatory functional foods. We dot the I's, cross the T's with a multivitamin, multimineral, activated omega-3s with resolvins, probiotics. We have more bugs in our gut than we have cells in our body, and a combination of D3 and K2. The next question, do I have any recommendations for migraines? And this is the International Journal of Pharmacy, and I'll show the exact article because this language is so powerful talking about Ganoderma lucidum. And notice what it says, it is proved to completely eradicate migraine without side effects. So that's going to be our first line intervention for migraines. And what I tell people is that bodies respond to frequency, duration, intensity, quality, and timing of stimuli. I had a young man that had severe migraines from multiple concussions, and I had him take 2 Ganoderma spores every waking hour for 21 days. Why so long? He was so depressed. He would keep himself in a dark room. He felt like he had an ice pick in his head. The pain was so bad. And his mother says, I'm worried. I think he's going to kill himself because the doctors aren't giving him any hope. And when I filmed him 21 days later, he said, I can't believe this. I'm 100% better. So think about what we can do with the right frequency, duration, intensity, quality, and timing of stimuli. What supplements do I recommend for gut health? I tell people that, there's 5 major questions for the gut and 2 minor questions. So magnificent 7 questions. We can solve most gut issues by asking, what are you eating? The sub questions, how much and how often? So we want not too much and not too often. How's your digestion? Digestion starts in the brain. Pavlov proved that. We want to chew it. The more we chew our food, believe it or not, the less we eat and the more efficiently we absorb the nutrients from them. Then we have the hydrochloric acid, the gallbladder, and the pancreas. What type of bugs live in your gut? How often do you poop? And do you have a leaky gut? And there are several things that I do to seal and heal the gut. One is actually colostrum. If you know the term colostrum, you'll realize that it actually is the immunoprotein that's in mother's milk. When moms give birth to a new baby, that first mother's milk has a lot of colostrum. And throughout the nursing cycle, it does have it in there. And one of the things that colostrum does is it actually helps to seal and heal the gut. Another thing that's really good is glutamine. Glutamine is the most abundant amino acid in muscle and plasma. And again, it's something that protects against leaky gut. Now, if we have a leaky gut, we actually get foreign proteins in the system that cause inflammatory response and immune response. And then enzymes. I'm a big fan of proteases, lipases, and amylases, and you can get plant-based enzymes that work over a broader range of pH in the gut. And finally, hydrochloric acid. There's plenty of people that need hydrochloric acid. And this slide talks about a hydrochloric acid challenge. You have a fairly normal meal, you take a tablet of hydrochloric acid. If you feel a warming sensation, you probably don't need to take hydrochloric acid. But if you don't, keep increasing the hydrochloric acid on progressive meals until you feel a warming sensation. And then ultimately, as you absorb your nutrients, you should be able to wean off of the hydrochloric acid. I tell people that the easiest meals to eat are what I call mono meals, 1 type of food per meal. And even though they show a couple of fruits, if you're going to eat fruit, eat 1 fruit. If you're going to eat fish, eat 1 fish. If you're going to eat veggies, eat 1 veggie, because it's a lot easier on your digestive system. The next question was, could I explain the link between Epstein-Barr virus and autoimmune disease? And we've got a lot of data on viruses most recently. And, there's still a debate on whether or not a virus is a living entity, because what viruses do is they insert their DNA into your DNA and they use your cell to make copies. So they turn your cells into virus-producing cells. And so this was a fascinating study. They infected the pancreas of mice with Epstein-Barr virus. And if they did no intervention whatsoever, all the mice developed type 1 diabetes. But when they gave them Ganoderma lucidum, my favorite superfood, a powerful immune enhancer, powerful as an antiviral, it even blocks replication of the HIV virus, none of the mice developed type 1 diabetes. So it basically completely eradicated the problem while preserving the pancreas. And when we start looking at autoimmunity, 6 universal immune modulators, all called out there with PubMed citations: vitamin D, DHEA, Ganoderma, pyrroliseed, omega-3 resolvins, and sealing and healing the gut. This is a wonderful strategy that I have seen reverse autoimmune disease. Next question, what's the best way to boost your immune system? The enemies of the immune system are essentially stress and sugar. So we want to buffer the stress, and we certainly want to minimize the sugar. This reference here shows that high blood sugar, hyperglycemia, is associated with both decreased motion of the white cells and decreased appetite of the white cells. And I tell people, sugar feeds infection, sugar feeds cancer, sugar slows the immune system, sugar decreases the appetite of the immune system. And then there's stress. We've known for over 50 years that stress is immunosuppressive. So stay away from the sugar, get your sugar under control, and then go with that stress reset. And here I have the references. Melatonin receptors in the adrenal glands, and melatonin is very good for the adrenals. I recommend it every waking hour, no toxicity, no known drug interaction. And the gut has 400 times the melatonin as the brain, and it's powerfully anti-cancer. And theanine is an amino acid in green tea. It promotes calmness without promoting sleepiness. And then we've got Ganoderma, the herb of spiritual potency. So you'll see that again, the stress reset, so powerful. What about fatty liver? Well, it's not just fatty liver. As people accumulate fat and they get it around their abdomen, they can get a fatty liver, they can get a fatty pancreas, they can even get a fatty heart. And that dramatically decreases the efficiency of all these organ systems. And so what do? We lose the fat. And, I know that's not very easy to do. And in fact, after this, I'm doing a launch for a new team partner where I'm going to talk about metabolism and how we can rev up metabolism to lose fat. And you're all invited to that if you like. But basically, we've got to lose the fat. We've got to get really lean and especially reduce the visceral adipose tissue. What about a glutathione dose for COVID? Well, that's a fairly new study. In fact, I think the data on this, it's published ahead of the publication line. It was actually December 3 of 2021. So this is hot off the press. They know that if they use 2,000 milligrams of glutathione, and there's forms that you can take orally or that you could even do IV, it's very powerful to protect people against COVID. How often? 2,000 milligrams? I would say as often as needed, as much as every waking hour. And then finally, can Ganoderma help with Hashimoto's thyroiditis? And the answer is yes. And in fact, there's lots of things that cause hypothyroid: leaky gut, adrenal issues, estrogen toxicity, liver problems, autoimmunity. And all those PubMeds show that Ganoderma is good for all of that. And it can be used to treat and or prevent autoimmune disease. So I know that was a lot of data fast. I love the fact that people actually submitted questions, and I hope you got the answers you're looking for. And I'm wondering if any others came up in the chat. And by the way, since I do have a launch of a new team member coming up after this, I'd like to get off at 6:45 to prepare for that, because that one's right at 6:45 my time. 7 is that launch. So Carol, so beautiful to see you again. I missed you, my beautiful friend.
Well, it's nice to be back. So you did answer some of the questions. So I'm going to go through the questions that are in the chat, because some of it you covered and some you did not quite get to. So I'll just read them to you. So this is a two-part question. What can be done for an enlarged liver, possibly alcoholic fatty liver? And how does the enlarged liver affect the body? How serious is it?
It's serious. And so we want to get that under control quickly. And what they came to understand over time is that fatty liver ultimately becomes fibrotic liver, becomes sclerotic liver, and that can become liver failure, or it can even progress to liver cancer. And that sequencing, I probably have it where I could show the slide, but we don't want that to happen. And so friends do not let friends develop a fatty liver. Easier said than done, but ultimately what we want to do is just make sure that we keep an ideal body weight and do the things to lose the weight, lose the fat, and keep ourselves happy. This one doesn't show it to hepatic carcinoma. There's probably another one that does. I'm looking through my references. But lose the fat, easier said than done. Do whatever it takes to make it happen. All right, I think this one will show that progression. Carol, I'm looking but not finding, but I will keep looking.
Okay. While you keep looking, what do you recommend for someone who is overweight and just had major heart surgery?
Well, they obviously have to take it easy on their exercise. They really want to work with a professional. So after cardiac surgery, you're going to have a period of time where you've got to make sure that that heart is working and that you don't overstress it. And they have a very specialized cardiac rehab. And although it's not easy to do, in fact, it's even harder to do because, you know, people that get themselves in that circumstance, they very often have challenges with food addictions. So I talked a little bit about food addiction, and dopamine is the neurotransmitter there, but it doesn't take long to reset dopamine, about 21 days. If you can find a way to get yourself in a circumstance where you can't get sugar, can't get alcohol, can't get things to drive the dopamine, take good things like Ganoderma, then you can potentially get over this challenge. And then once you get over that addiction, stay past it. So this is a healthy liver. This is non-alcoholic fatty liver, and that's fat accumulation in the liver. Then this is called non-alcoholic steatic hepatitis. Then that leads to cirrhosis because that inflammatory process leads to scarring. And then notice that it leads to liver cancer. And notice either liver transplant or liver death is the outcome. And, you know, this is getting to be a progressively serious problem because we even have kids now that have fatty livers because of that very poor diet that's going on.
Perfect. Thank you. Someone, Karen Wheeler knows, has migraine headaches every day. She feels like she has a cold all the time. Do you think it could be the sinuses, and what could be done to help?
It certainly could be sinuses. And one of my favorite things for sinuses is a saline rinse. There's something called a neti pot, and saline is good at killing microbes. But we also know that most chronic sinusitis is fungal. And so there's different herbs that have antifungal action. Uva ursi is one. Berberine has antifungal action. You know, you could probably even put in a little Ganoderma in there as well, and put that in the neti pot and rinse the nose with it daily. And if you clear out the sinuses and the head starts feeling better, pretty good idea that that is, you know, a part of the problem.
Perfect. Suggestions for enlarged prostate.
Well, prevention trumps cure, you know, and turns out that the prostate tends to be really aggravated by estrogens. And I think I showed a video on one of the Ask the Doctors. It was a very curious video. The study was out of Toronto. They found that in areas where women took the most birth control pills, men had the highest incidence of prostate cancer. And on the surface, that sounds, okay, how can that be possible? But when women take the birth control pill, ethinyl estradiol, it's 100 times stronger than human estrogen. They pee some of it out. It gets into the groundwater, gets into the drinking water. It's not filtered out. People drink the water, and men were ending up with serious prostate problems. I think they're going to find out that the major player in male prostate problems is actually estrogen. And so there are some there's estrogen alpha receptors, those cause prostate enlargements. There's estrogen beta receptors that causes prostate shrinkage. And some estrogen receptor beta agonists include Siberian rhubarb in a very special form. You know, I lecture for some of the top companies around the world. Metagenics has something called Estrovera, and that's a Siberian rhubarb, which is an estrogen beta modulator. And I have a guy that had such severe prostate growth that he pinched off his urethra, backed up his kidneys, and had uremic poisoning and nearly died. And it had been going on for so long, they said, sorry, you're going to be on dialysis for the rest of your life. Well, once we got him on a protocol, Ganoderma every waking hour, Estrovera every waking hour, processing out his estrogens, we're now 3 months into it. He's never had to do a single round of dialysis. We've got his body cleaning itself, and every measurement, his kidneys are improving. So, and then there's the standard, what's known as saw palmetto, which is a 5-alpha reductase modulator, which, by the way, Ganoderma lucidum is as well. So I would do Siberian rhubarb. I would do genistein and diazine. Those are soy isoflavones. I would do the saw palmetto and the Ganoderma spores, along with making sure that you eat an organic diet.
Okay, next question. Pete was just clarifying when you say spores every waking hour, that's 2 capsules, correct?
That is correct. 2 capsules of the Ganoderma spores every waking hour.
Okay. Jewel asks, what's your treatment link for sarcoidosis?
That's an autoimmune circumstance. And so that slide where I showed the 6 universal immune modulators, DHEA, vitamin D, Ganoderma, Perilla, omega-3 resolvins, and sealing and healing the gut, those are all part of it. And that tends to be a fibrotic condition as well. So sometimes we do some what are known as proteolytic enzymes. I consulted with a long distance case of elite athlete that came up with a severe case of COVID. He had severe lung fibroses, and his oxygen capacity and his lung capacity was so low. We put him on hourly doses of proteases, plant-based proteases. Those are things that dissolve protein in Ganoderma spores. And the doctors are still marveling at how powerful his recovery has been. So, there's things we can get back. If we all team up together, we can make this world better.
Perfect. Can Ganoderma help with vertigo and Menaris disease?
Well, I'm going to say I don't know if it can help, but it sure won't hurt. There's likely an inflammatory component of that. Sometimes there's a viral component of that. And there's often a neuropathy component of that. And Ganoderma has potential to help all those. Menaris is a rough one. I've seen a few good results, but most of the time, by the time I've seen them, they've been so deep into the process that it's too long lasting, and it seems the damage has been permanent.
Okay. Their friend's been told to stay away from caffeine. Can she still have coffee tea with Ganoderma?
Well, we want to know why she was told to stay away from caffeine. There's people that make that blanket recommendation. Caffeine is found in over 60 species of plants. It's a natural anti-insecticide. And even if we talk about bad coffee, there's a 5.2 million person study that showed that people that drink the most coffee live the longest. They have the lowest Parkinson's, the lowest type 2 diabetes. There's some benefits to caffeine. You just don't want to use it as a crutch. And too often, people just group this into a bad series of compounds that no one should consume, but that's really not accurate. Most people will do pretty okay with it, and Ganoderma raises that number to a very high percentage of people will be better off for it.
Okay, next question's a long one. Can Ganoderma treat vestibular issues, and what are the risks or benefits to treating it with Ganoderma? And are there any known contradictions with Beta-Histines?
So no known drug interaction, no known contraindication. We're finding a lot of people that are having problems with beta-histines and with histamine and other things like that. And I was on a private Zoom with a PhD researcher from Israel yesterday for an hour because I've been looking for answers, to the spike protein problem in COVID. And this researcher, man, I love him. He dedicated his entire adult life to studying something called galectin-3, which is a major driver of inflammatory process, autoimmunity, cancer, really bad things. And amazingly, they found that citrus pectin is absolutely phenomenal for modulating galectin-3. And I think it's going to be part of my standard recommendations from now on, and especially for these people that have this, very reactive circumstances. I think we're going to find it's very powerful. I don't know what country you're in, but if you can measure galectin-3, if it's elevated, that's something that does really well with citrus pectin.
Perfect. How many spores should one take after testing positive for COVID, and any other suggestions to take or do?
Yeah, I've got a full protocol. I recommend the colostrum 5 times a day. I'm going to recommend zinc 20 milligrams at least 5 times a day. Vitamin C, 3,000 milligrams 5 times a day, whatever bowel tolerance is. Vitamin D, at minimum 10,000 IU. If you're deficient, maybe 30,000 IU. And 2 spores every waking hour until it's gone. And that's what we've done with my entire patient base. And I have not had a patient that's done this protocol that has had any complication or even went to the hospital. And we're talking about couples in their 80s. but I will be the first to tell you that I have a very biased patient base. When people come to me, they're proactive about their health. They're generally doing a lot more healthy things than the average person. So, if someone that is not healthy does this, maybe they want to do an ivermectin, maybe they want to do a monoclonal antibody. Joe Rogan did that. Aaron Rodgers did that. They basically had almost no issue with COVID and they got over it so fast. So medicine has some things that are quite good.
Perfect. Are flu shots necessary for the flu season, and what are the implications of not getting the flu shot? Are flu shots, yeah, that's it, sorry.
Well, they're certainly not necessary, and they probably do more harm than good. And when they actually studied people that got the flu shot last year versus COVID, I think the exact number was they were 36% more likely to have a severe COVID problem because it actually begins to weaken the immune system. So, you want to have a good defense, and you eat right, drink right, think right, move right, sleep right, poop right, talk right every day. That's the best way to get there.
Perfect. And I'm wrapping it up with this last question because we will stay on time for Dr. Bob. Caro asks, how many spores or mycelium and how often to treat mild concussions?
Well, I'm not sure that, I'm glad we're going to call it mild, but I don't take a brain injury mild under any circumstances. And I ultimately want to treat them until it's completely cleared. And I even like it every waking hour. And what's fascinating, there's a brain software called NeuroTracker, and a lot of professional sports teams use it, military use it. They get a baseline and they can actually use it to monitor concussion recovery. And wouldn't it be nice if everybody would have a baseline of their brain with NeuroTracker? Then if they did have a head injury, they keep nourishing themselves and doing all the things they need to until they get back to that baseline. And that's what I recommend. We want to reestablish all function. Remember, there's no drug interaction, no known toxicity. Superfood with all the fabulous 50 modulates the inflammatory process, alkalizes the system, helps the body to heal. It's safe, it's effective. Now let's just get that brain back to where it needs to be to get you your best life. And by the way, it also dissolves amyloid plaque. And if you ever saw the movie Concussion, if scar tissue accumulates in the brain and actually begins to contract, it can choke off the brain and create permanent damage or death in the case of Mike Webster.
Okay, well, everybody, thank you. I think it's time for you guys to unmute and say thank you to the man of the hour.
Thanks, Dr. Bob.
Thank you, Dr. Bob.
Thank you, Dr. Bob.
Welcome back, Carol.
Thank you.
Especially thank you